In today's video, I want to go over and do my full review of the Rings of Power Season 2. As a whole, it is plain to see that this season was a lot better than Season 1, but there are still some things that I did dislike and a lot of things I actually liked. So in this video, I'm pretty much going to be doing a like and dislike list, pros and cons, and then fully rate the season as a whole. First, I'm going to start going through a list of things I actually enjoyed from this season. First, I want to talk about Elrond, who becomes more of a warrior this season. In the first season, he was more of like this politician elf, and he was trying to mend his relationship with Doran the entire season. But in this season, he is now trying to get rid of these rings of power that were given to the elves, and he's trying to push Galadriel to not keep this ring. Second thing I liked was Arondir in this season. He was really good, and towards the end of this season, he really popped off, and in that final battle, he did a really nice job. Even in the first season, I really enjoyed his character. I thought his character was a great addition to the Middle-earth realm, and I think I really enjoyed him even more in this season. In addition to Arondir, I think the Ents that he comes across with Isildur was really cool to see some Ents in this show. Something to tie in between Two Towers and the Rings of Power was getting to see the Ents, and that was really cool. A small thing that I actually liked was the Burrow Downs, where Galadriel, Elrond, and their elven troop enter, and it kind of was reminiscent of the Lord of the Rings Online game. I think the main thing that I really enjoyed from this season was, of course, the forging of the Rings of Power. In the first season, at the end, we got to see the forging of the 3 rings, but then this season, we got to see the forging of the 7, and then at the end, the forging of the 9 rings of power. Everything that happens between Celebrimbor and Sauron was just so much fun. Now, of course, a lot that happens in this show does not happen in the book, because within the show, they're taking a lot of freedoms, and I think the freedoms they took with Celebrimbor and Sauron were done very well. The slow burn manipulation that Sauron has over Celebrimbor and to make him and force him to do these rings of power is just insane and sinister, and I really enjoyed it. And on top of that, he's not just brainwashing Celebrimbor, but he is brainwashing all of the other elves that work in that forge and convincing them that Celebrimbor is actually going insane. Of course, at the end, he succeeds, and Celebrimbor pushes one of the elf maidens straight off the wall and into the orcs, and we got to see Sauron being Sauron and just do something very evil. Another thing is just Sauron getting to use his magic. He goes from Hellbrand to the Gift Giver, and he uses his powers a lot while manipulating Celebrimbor into believing that he's in a peaceful Eregion. But then outside of that, there is a war raging on between Eregion and the orcs from Adar. I thought his magic and his powers being used in that way was awesome. Another small thing that I actually kind of liked was at the end of this season, we have Elrond and all of these other elves end up finding the area that will eventually be Rivendell. It was a little weird that the elves were cheering loudly. I feel like more elf-like thing would be for them to kneel and place their hand on their chest and bow to King Gil-galad. But instead they cheered, and it is what it was. But I really enjoyed getting to see, like, wow, this is going to be Rivendell, and this is where the last lonely home will be. The last thing that I absolutely enjoyed, and it might be my favorite thing out of this season and this show so far, was the Balrog. The first time we see the Balrog is in the Fellowship of the Ring, and then we get to see it again in the Rings of Power Season 2 finale, and it looked amazing. I'm always so skeptical when these shows come out and people try to make all of these TV shows based off of books and of movies that have already come out, but I think they did a very good job at making the Balrog look almost exactly similar to the one in the Fellowship. Actually, take that back. I think it looked exactly like the one from the Fellowship, and it was so freaking awesome. Of course, that is Durin's Bane, and he does kill Durin, but Durin goes out in a blaze of glory, jumps with his axe, and just slams a Balrog in the head. Now, of course, I didn't do too much to the Balrog, but I like to think that he put a dent in that Balrog's head. Now on to the things that I disliked and really did not care for within this Season 2. The first thing is the Hobbit storyline. I'm really kind of over the hobbits in this show. I know hobbits are a foundation of Lord of the Rings, and a hobbit, Frodo, took the One Ring to Mount Doom, but I think that the Hobbit storyline within the Rings of Power is just not interesting. I really don't care for it that much. And the fact that they spent so much time focusing on their characters, they're actually really irrelevant in my mind. And yes, it seems like they are going to be the ones that found the Shire, and that's cool and all, but bring them back when that actually happens. And for now, take them out and let's focus more on Numenor. In this season, everything that happened in Numenor was kind of just not exciting. The storyline was just very bland, and it was stretched out too long. I think they could have sped up the process with all of the storylines in Numenor more than just what happened in this season, and I'm hoping that in the third season they accelerate things a lot more. In the beginning of this season, the orcs end up getting the upper hand on Sauron and killing him. Now I know, Adar did help that process by stabbing him with the Crown of Morgoth, but the orcs stabbing him and killing him made zero sense. Sauron is not at his peak power at that point because he does not have the One Ring, but he's still very powerful and able to eliminate a lot of these orcs. But I guess he was wounded from Adar, and that did stunt a lot of his powers, but still, it was really weird to see a lot of orcs just smashing and stabbing on Sauron. And to continue off of that, I found it very odd and kind of weird that he turned into some black goo like a venom symbiote and then just go and eat a villager lady who is passing on the road and then become Hellbrand. Out of all the things that Rings of Power has made and I've just questioned, I think that one might be my least favorite, that he is able to just turn into this weird like venom goo. I did not like that at all. Another thing I didn't care for was the Stranger's storyline. The entire first season, we had no idea who he was. He was the stranger, and he was learning to talk again. Then in the second season, we were doing the same exact thing, but he could talk, but had no idea who he was. They definitely could have accelerated that storyline and him find out who he was in the middle of the season. But it's kind of annoying that I was able to predict that in the first episode, I knew for a fact that we were not going to find out his name until the last episode. And of course, we found out just that in episode 8, when we found out that his name is Gandalf. Now, the stranger becoming Gandalf, I thought was just okay. I don't think they did it wrong, or there isn't anything in lore that is actually debunking that. It's the fact that I'm just scared. I really fear anybody touching any of the large characters from any large franchise that I've really enjoyed and grew up with, because I'm just scared they're going to ruin it. When you get these big corporations who try their hand at making something out of what's already been established and it's already something huge, it gets very dicey, and there's a lot of room for when they take their big freedoms to mess up. Even though him becoming Gandalf isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's still something just very scary because I'm afraid what Amazon is going to do to the character of Gandalf in his younger years. Not to mention, it kind of resembles James McAvoy and Patrick Stewart, two people who are playing Charles Xavier in different timelines. Because now we have two different people playing Gandalf in different timelines. The person who is playing Gandalf in The Rings of Power, and Ian McKellen, who is going to be reprising his role as Gandalf in The Hunt for Gollum. Now, as always, I'm extremely hopeful, or at least I pray, that Amazon will not ruin this show and the Middle-earth that I know and love, and I hope they don't ruin the character of Gandalf. The big kicker that everyone had problems with, or at least all the people that I saw, was Elrond and Galadriel kissing. I understand what the writers were trying to do, and I understand when they zoomed out on that picture of them kissing, he was handing her a block pick, but it did not take away that it was absolutely 100% unnecessary for him to kiss his future mother-in-law at all. And as a lot of people already know, yes, that is his future mother-in-law, because Galadriel will have a daughter with Celeborn, and then Elrond will then eventually marry that daughter. I think they just feel the need to add certain dramatic effects into these shows, and that one did not stick. The last thing that I did not like from this season was when King Durin was trying to knock down the wall that would eventually lead to the Balrog. He ended up killing multiple dwarves in the process, and the fact that the Ring of Power was changing him negatively. Now, to my knowledge, I do not remember any of the dwarves having a negative effect as a result of the Rings of Power. I could be wrong. I don't know everything there is to know about Middle-earth, and there are things that I'm still learning, so I could be wrong. But I definitely did not like that the ring convinced him that it was a good idea to slay his own dwarves, and that it was driving him mad to the point that he had to do that. If anything, I could understand maybe him knocking them out or injuring them, but he just flat out killed them, and not just one dwarf, but many dwarfs. It didn't make any sense, and I did not like that at all. The last thing I'm just kind of neutral on are the two hobbits, Poppy Proudfellow and Nori Brandyfoot. I feel like this is Amazon's way of making their own Frodo and Sam, and they're okay hobbits. They were kind of funny and fun to see in the first season, but like I said, as far as the entire storyline of the hobbits, I'm okay if they're just removed from the show for now. Now, the things that I'm excited for the next season and going forward for the Rings of Power is Sauron going to Numenor and then eventually creating the One Ring. That is something I am super excited for. I'm also hoping they will do more with the Balrog. I think it was great to see the Balrog at the end of this season, and it would be kind of a pity to bring the Balrog in at the end of this season and then to never show him again. I think the Dorn that is now the new king has a lot to do with dwarves, and I'm curious to see how it's going to go with that, and I think he has not seen the last of that Balrog. And of course, I'm just curious how they're going to handle the character of Gandalf now in his younger years, and how they're going to handle that new Dark Wizard. A lot of people were suspecting that maybe that is Saruman, but it makes zero sense because Saruman was sent over with the rest of the wizards to combat and defeat Sauron. If that Dark Wizard actually is Saruman, it is completely contradicting and definitely goes against what we already know, because he just flat out killed a whole bunch of hobbits to prove to Gandalf, this is what Sauron's going to do if you do not join me. Also, not to mention, that is not Saruman's staff, so I'm really hoping that is not Saruman. They can definitely make him one of the Blue Wizards. I was hoping that Gandalf was going to be one of the Blue Wizards, but that kind of got debunked. I had someone comment on one of my TikTok videos that I posted about Gandalf and the fact that maybe because he had memory loss, that maybe he's remembering incorrectly. Maybe he's not Gandalf. Maybe he's remembering Gandalf's memories, and instead, he's actually one of the Blue Wizards. This is a very interesting theory, and if it actually proves to be true, I think that would work perfectly fine, but unfortunately, I think this character is Gandalf, the staff looks like Gandalf's, he looks like Gandalf, and unfortunately, he is not one of the Blue Wizards. Once again, I did actually enjoy this season more than the first. It still is not my favorite show on television right now, and it definitely is not my favorite Lord of the Rings adaptation. It definitely pulls a lot of things out of the Silmarillion, and pulls a lot from other Lord of the Rings books, but I still think they take a lot of freedoms, which Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit definitely did, but they're freedoms that I personally am not enjoying. I think this is a very generous rating, but I think I'm going to rate Season 2 a 7.5, maybe even a 7 out of 10. Still nothing in comparison to the Lord of the Rings films, and in my opinion, not even the Hobbit films, but still something fun to watch and to get to see something different within Middle-earth. And I definitely will be tuning in to watch Season 3. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.